Hey everyone, and today I'll be covering a new Mass Effect 4 leak covered by Game Rant as well as the Xbox podcast in their latest articles, so let's check it out.
Lockhart QT.
So on the 9th of September 2023, we've had a brand new news article by Game Rant titled Mass Effect 4 leak suggests game is ditching Andromeda feature. So delving right into the article, the highlights are as follows. These are like the main bits of the article itself. According to a new rumour, Mass Effect 4 will ditch the open-world elements of Mass Effect Andromeda, potentially returning to the franchise's classic format. The decision to move away from open-world gameplay may help BioWare handle the massive scope of the upcoming RPG, which may involve a dual-galaxy approach. Now, this is really telling here, and this is the type of news as a BioWare news channel, Mass Effect news channel, whatever you want to call me. I've been waiting for something like this for a while, for a long time, because Mass Effect news has been rather sparse, and this could be huge information and really telling. Now, we've speculated for a while regarding the dual galaxy concept and feature, as Mass Effect Andromeda was teased in the next Mass Effect teaser trailer, with the Pathfinder and Tempest audio clips being directly in the trailer. As well as project director Mike Gamble saying as much and pretty much confirming this on Twitter, saying that Andromeda has been playing a role in the development in some way, shape or another, as well as huge members of the team, as well as game directors, programmers and writers actually going on social media to say that they've gone back and played the entirety of the Mass Effect trilogy as well as Andromeda. But if we could travel between galaxies, which I've wanted, it's like my number one feature that I want in the next game, then this could also be a slight confirmation that the game takes place potentially in the far distant future. We know that in Mass Effect Andromeda it took the initiative essentially 600 plus years to get to Andromeda during Lightspeed, and obviously time travel, I really don't want that to be a thing personally, but if we are travelling between galaxies, this could potentially indicate that the game is set hundreds of years in the future, which would make sense because although we see Liara, we do essentially, Asari can age hundreds of years, so it's not out of the realm of possibility for Liara to be in a Mass Effect game that's set hundreds of years in the future. But at the same time, it could be set during, shortly after Mass Effect 3, like 5 to 10 years, and we could be travelling to Andromeda for some unknown reason. But less speculation of the story, the article actually reads as follows. Mass Effect 4 will ditch the open-world elements of Mass Effect Andromeda, according to a newly emerged leak. Even though the last installment in the franchise wasn't an entirely free-roaming experience, many fans still criticised Mass Effect Andromeda as an example of semi-open-world games that would have been better if they were more linear. And here is where the article is right, in my opinion. Andromeda being more open-world, if you go watch these sort of BioWare documentaries and essentially the aftermath of the poor launch, the open world, or the semi-open world rather, nature of Andromeda caused loads of issues in terms of development. Obviously you had the infamous "my face is too tired," you had the poor animations, the bugs. I even recently on the channel played Andromeda in 2023 and I was still encountering loads and loads of bugs. Most AAA open world RPGs nowadays contain bugs, but Andromeda contained loads and loads and loads. So maybe if they switch development to a more linear sort of game design, it would be sort of less buggy essentially. The article then goes on to say, whatever the current state of the project is, the game itself might not double down on the open world elements from Andromeda. According to Windows Central's Jez Corden, speaking during the latest episode of the Xbox 2 podcast, Corden relayed a rumour that the next Mass Effect title will ditch the polarising Andromeda feature in favour of returning to the franchise's classic format. Now, in short, this means that the next game won't be semi-open world or have semi-open world sections via planets, but will be more similar to what they're calling in the article the classic format, the quote-unquote classic gameplay, which is obviously more akin to Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 in terms of a more linear exploration and cover-based corridor shooting combat. And in terms of game design, I personally hope they go with the latter rather than the former, in terms of I hope they actually do return to Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3 style of game design. As a reminder, the original Mass Effect trilogy mostly consisted of linear hub areas connected to sort of more linear corridors, allowing players to choose the order in which they undertake missions. Now, the only thing that I hope that doesn't return, I hope that, somehow they can make like an arcade mode where you can replay missions, is in the original trilogy, essentially because of the linear nature of it, you weren't able to replay missions. So I'm hoping in the next Mass Effect game they change this and they let you replay missions without having to start an entirely new playthrough. Like, you had more open areas like the Citadel or Omega, for example, where you could freely explore a bit, but the actual main levels, the bread and butter, were linear corridors with obviously cover-based shooting elements, as well as areas where you could talk to NPCs briefly before you go off on a mission, and you'd have multiple pathways that allowed for backtracking and things like that. In contrast, if you all remember, Mass Effect Andromeda had a more semi-open world design, as well as Dragon Age Inquisition and Anthem, which, by the way, were the 3 last BioWare games developed. So by dropping the semi-open world design, sorry, I couldn't talk then, it would be harder to develop. If you go back and watch the documentaries, Andromeda apparently was a development nightmare in terms of the open world, and overall it's generally more time consuming in terms of development. But BioWare could make each level feel more handcrafted and include some more cinematic moments like we saw in the legendary original trilogy games. For me, Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect 2 were better for this because they had the more cinematic moments that really made the individual levels feel more memorable and more fun. Making an open world or even semi-open world RPG, including loads of galaxies, planets, NPCs, guns, all the rest of it, is within the realm of possibility, especially with the addition of procedural generation demonstrated by the recently released Starfield. By the way, I have played Starfield, just to let you know that. I've only put like 15 hours into actually recording this video, as well as games like No Man's Sky, for example, as well. And Andromeda even tried to include procedural generation in development. However, this was scrapped midway through development because it actually caused loads of issues, and the game would have come out a few years later, or a couple of years later, if they had included it. However, the Mass Effect series, in my opinion, has always been better when it's a linear corridor-based design with smaller semi-open world areas, again, more like akin to hub areas like the Citadel or Omega, or like the Normandy in general, really, the areas where you can explore a bit and talk to NPCs and start quests and missions. Returning to the classic format would allow BioWare to better handcraft each area to not only make them look better graphically, they could include more detail into individual areas because they would be able to incorporate tricks where you can't actually see certain things in development, and by putting objects basically to block your view and things like that. Because in an open world, obviously everything is open, so it just causes so much more issues. And personally, I do think the game would be, better designed, and it would have less bugs if it was a return to the classic format. Open world titles tend to be among the most demanding types of AAA games to develop. Look at the sort of newer Assassin's Creeds, or even Starfield for examples, or even the latest Legend of Zeldas, being Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Take all that into account with the recent news of BioWare. They've just been hit with massive and significant layoffs, as well as massive studio restructurings. By the way, if you want to check out those individual news videos, I have got them on the channel. But taking all of the news we have of the latest Mass Effect game into consideration, I feel like this could really indicate a return back to more linear game design and to a return to the quote-unquote classic format. So anyway guys, it's a bit of a sort of more rambly, unstructured video again, but if you could tell me in the comments below, what do you think of this news of the leak and the rumour? Do you think the next Mass Effect game will be open world or semi-open world like Mass Effect Andromeda, or do you think this is right? Because at the end of the day, nothing's been confirmed by bioware yet, and we haven't heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, so this could also be a load of BS, but hey ho. Personally, I do think it will return to the classic format, but again we'll have to wait and see. For more Mass Effect news, speculation and general videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and for more Mass Effect news, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.